Okay, so I'm Walter Bland. I have a small commercial restoration practice here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we work all over the Southeast except for the lower coastal plain. We've been working on Achyranthes for a while now. It is an important invasive species that we target in our work. We've already been through how to identify it. You guys know that it's spreading rapidly. We see the heaviest infestations in and around urban areas, parks, residential landscapes, and some of our urban forests. But it is moving into our natural areas, the national forests and the state forests. But it's not quite as bad of a problem there as it is elsewhere. As you guys know, it spreads primarily by seed. It has these bracts that turn into barbs that catch on fur and clothing. Animals, humans, landscape equipment, and water are the primary vectors for dispersal. It does germinate readily in shade, wherever there's ample moisture. We have our biggest problems along streams, as you guys do as well, I'm sure. One interesting aspect, at least from our experience, is that the stems are very brittle, which means that if you try and pull a large plant, the top of the plant will break off, leaving the root crown intact, and that makes manual control methods difficult. Timber harvest equipment is also a primary vector. The seeds get lodged in the tires of equipment. They get lodged in hikers' boots and obviously in the fur of animals and pets. I looked around, I couldn't see much in the way of studies on allelopathic properties. It seems like it has allelopathic properties to me, or it may just be that it creates such a dense stand when it's mature that it suppresses the understory. When you're working with this plant, you should always use integrated pest management methods to proceed, which means you need to assess the scale and density of your infestations. You should try and quantify or record your information so that you can go back and look at it after your treatment. You need to figure out what your minimum threshold of control is for the project that you're working in. And you need to train your technicians or your applicators to recognize the species, particularly when it's in its juvenile form. You need to monitor your results, assess your effectiveness, and you need to follow up with remedial actions when you can. In our experience, cultural strategies are generally not very effective at controlling the species. In general, in this particular method of control, the best thing is to avoid disturbance and to try and create buffers around your project site and monitor encroachment in those buffers and treat quickly to prevent it from getting into the interior of your sites. Mechanical likewise has limited effectiveness. Hand weeding can be a tool if you're working next to sensitive plants or native plants that you're trying to preserve. We use mechanical control in combination with chemical control, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but we'll frequently cut down a stand of chaff flower with brush cutters in order to get it to resprout and then apply chemicals. We find that chemical tools are the most effective. We generally use backpack sprayers and do spot sprays with broadleaf herbicides that contain 2,4-D. I'm not aware of any biological control methods. It's important that you do a kind of triage when you're starting a project and figure out, you know, what state are the plants in? Are they large plants? Are they small plants? Are they getting ready to flower? Are they in flower? The size and the maturity of the plants matters greatly towards the effectiveness of your treatment. Generally, you want to try and spray your plants early in the growing season when they're still small, generally less than 18 inches, and certainly before flowering or seeding. We generally use a 1.5% solution of a broadleaf herbicide containing 2,4-D. We have found that triclopyr and glyphosate are not as effective as 2,4-D. You need to, as I said, you need to apply the chemical early in the growing season. Weather is also a challenge. Down here in the southeast, we generally have heavy rainfall in the early spring, and that makes it difficult to time our applications. But we also have some pretty severe drought periods during the heat of the summer, and we find that the plants will kind of go into a dormant state and can shake off any kind of herbicide application and then resume growth later in the growing period. So we, as I said, we use a combination of mechanical and chemical treatment when the plants are large. We'll cut it down with brush cutters and then apply the broadleaf herbicide. If using brush cutters isn't practical in the projects where we're working, we will use diquat, which is a contact herbicide, to burn the vegetation down to the ground, which is what you see here in this picture. And then when the plants resprout, you can use the 2,4-D on it. We generally try and combine treatments of all the different non-native species that we target when we're working in an area, and it is easy to treat, you know, all of the same species that I'm sure you guys are aware of: hairy crabweed, beefsteak plant, Chinese basil, and Japanese stiltgrass. We can combine our treatments with the chaff flower treatment and kill two birds with one stone, as it were. There are some perennial species that you can treat, particularly with diquat. Diquat is a good tool to whack the perennial species back during the growing season, and then treat with the 2,4-D after that. So this is what we want, and there's a lot of work to get there, but we feel it's important to do as much as we can in whacking it back. So anyway, good luck with your projects, and I'll